Hello everyone, Muckluck here, and this is the second Diablo 4 beta review that I have done. The first beta review I did was after the first beta weekend, at which time you could only play the Barbarian, the Rogue, and the Sorcerer. I'll have a link to that down below if you are interested in watching that. In that review, I covered the beta problems, the returning to dark themes, the graphics, the sound design, the abilities, the skill trees, the customization, whether or not you'd have to play the other Diablo games to enjoy this, the open world class balance, and things like that. If you're interested in any of that, I'm not going to recover that a second time. That is in the other video. In this one, I want to talk more about what we experienced that was new in this beta. This beta was the first one that you could play the Necromancer or the Druid. And so I dove in, did kind of a deep dive into those. Now, as mentioned before, I have played Diablo 1, Hellfire, 2, its expansion, D3 and its expansion, every single Torchlight, Grim Dawn, Last Epoch, and a little bit of Path of Exile. This gave me a lot of points of comparison for ARPGs against what we saw this weekend. So just to give you a little bit of a basis that I know a little bit about what I'm talking about, and I'm not like the game reviewer that couldn't beat the Cuphead tutorial. Now, first off, some general issues I found, and then I want to go into specific class stuff with the Necromancer and the Druid. So here I am in-game in the beta right now. Let's talk about the detailed stats window. I actually had to ask my chat where to find this. So if you want to see your critical strike chance or your lightning resist or anything like that, you have to actually open your inventory, click Materials and Stats, which defaults to looking at plants, ore, and leather. Click on this eye up here, and then scroll down. That's awful. That should not be that buried. Additionally, on the topic of stats, they specifically said in a video of theirs that they made it to where when you stack armor, that also boosts all your resistances, because they didn't want people to just suddenly die to a lightning attack and be like confused because their lightning resist was low, which I feel is kind of a slap in the face. Like they do not trust us to know that, like, these are all different stats. If you just stack armor, all of this stuff will increase. That's nice. I mean, just dumbing it down to this much makes it feel like, just in that one regard, kind of feels like a mobile game. I don't like that. Would not mind seeing that change. I feel like that's oversimplification, but that's just my opinion on it. At the very least, I would like if I hit the C button for a character panel to open, just like it did in Diablo 1 and 2 and 3, and not just have it, be buried in there. The next thing is the outside world level scaling. This is something I didn't fully grasp during the first beta. I did once I got into this one, and I thought this was really cool. When you go into the outside world, what will happen is it will put you into a copy of the outside world that is scaled for your level. Now, you will see other people out there. So if you see a level 1 player in your zone, it's kind of funny because it says level 25. A level 1 player is going to be one-shotting like the bears and wolves and stuff. But if I go out there, I might not be able to one-shot them because I'm level 25. So in terms of percentages, it's like I got weaker compared to the outside world when I went out there than the other person is. Like the lower level person is one-shotting the stuff, whereas I'm not one-shotting the stuff. So it's kind of an odd feeling, and I think it's going to stay. But that is what it is. You are in the outside world and you are with other people. And I already shared my thoughts on that in the previous video. No map overlay. If I want to look at the map, I have to do this. And I cannot see my health or if I'm in trouble while doing this. I have to do this. The map's okay. I don't love it. I don't hate it, but I certainly don't love it either. But the fact that there's not even an option of the overlay, you just have this little one up in the corner or this where you can't see your health, I really don't like that. I do miss, every Diablo game going all the way back to D1 had the transparent overlaid one that you could see on the screen, and you could turn that on or off as you needed to. I miss that. I wish that would come back. It's not there currently. Dodging. The game does have a dodge. That was me doing it right there. This is the cooldown for it right here. It seems to be less like an evasion frame, or like an invulnerability frame, and more like just a movement. But often that's good enough. However, one thing that is interesting is if you are CC'd, like let's say a cold enchanted mob freezes you solid, you cannot dodge or heal. Like, you can get stun locked to death without the ability to use your potions, which really sucks. I mean, it makes sense if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. If you're frozen solid, you can't lift the potion bottle to your lips. However, it's like, ugh, it really sucks. It makes me feel like I need stun breaks or something like in Guild Wars 2. The next thing I want to touch on is over the course of the beta, it did get better. And again, I'm not yet talking about classes. I'm going to go into that in just a second. Over the course of the beta, it did get better. At the beginning, there was like queue times of many hours. And then it was like, it was much shorter than that. And then like when I'd be walking around, the skeletons would not be doing a walking animation. They would just be teleporting behind me. It would just be very jarry and kind of janky. It looked bad. However, it's gotten smoother and smoother. I think they've already done numerous small fixes, and that's awesome. They've done numerous things to try and make this better, and it shows. It does show, and they've done great with that. So there's a little bit of feedback on that. Okay. Next up, I want to talk about specific stuff with the classes, and let's start with the Necromancer. Now, in the Diablo franchise, D1 did not have Necro. D2 did, and D3 did with its expansion. However, despite the fact that I was a massive Necromancer enjoyer in D2, I did not like it in D3. I think the Witch Doctor in D3 was closer to the spirit of the original D2 Necro, the army of like the fetishes and stuff. Like in D2, you could have 99 skeletons. For those who didn't play it, you could. In D3, you could have like a little group of 4 or 5 skeletons, and they moved together like as a unit. It was like they had one brain cell and they shared it. And it just looked like you were controlling just like a little cloud of bone, which was not bad. But the Witch Doctor that had an army of fetishes, or a bunch of zombie dogs, and the Gargantuan or Gargantuans with a certain ring, stuff like that, it was just much more. It was much more. So compare that to D3. Now, D4. D4, they have, some things are better, some things are worse. First off, I want to start with something really good. The Skelly AI is some of the best minion AI I've ever seen, and it's available from level 1. I'm not going to attack here. I'm going to run over here. All right. So if you'll watch the skeletons, they split up. They will split up, and they will each tackle a different enemy. So let me try and get these. And so I've got some with shields. They will branch out, and each of them try to tank different stuff and make sure that if possible, nothing is on you. So they will like fan out and divide. Now, if you want them to focus their fire, maybe that's not good. But what this resulted in is there was certain boss fights that we'd be doing, and the boss would occasionally spawn like these explosive things over in the corner, and you would need to go destroy them. The moment she would spawn these things, these skeletons would immediately, some of them would run over, kill it, and then come back. And I didn't even have to do anything. It was wild. So they've got an AI that they will divide themselves, like divide and conquer, if at all possible. If you've got one enemy, they'll all hit that one. If you've got 2 enemies, they'll go half and half, and so on and so on. And they do that from level 1, which is quite good. Second, they are quite strong. They're quite strong, like shockingly so. And almost, man, I don't want to say too much because I love playing Necro, but the skeletons don't require any skill points. In D2, you would have to devote a bunch of skill points to summons on the tree. However, in D4, there's this thing called the Book of the Dead. And Book of the Dead, and you also start with the raise skeleton button. From level 1, without having to put a skill point anywhere, you have this button here at level 1. This button, as long as this button is here, you've got your army. Now, in the Book of the Dead, you've got a few options. Skeleton warriors, you can make skirmishers, which are, think like Berserker, take more damage, deal more damage. Defenders, which have the shields, and reapers, which have like big sides. And for each one, you got 3 options. Like you can have 5 skirmishers instead of 4. Whenever you crit, they hit harder. Or the diamond option is always you sacrifice those units, but get a passive buff. So if you want to play a Necro that doesn't use an army, you would just pick the sacrifice options and get a buff from it. So right now for defenders, I've got that they get a bunch of thorns from me. So if they get hit, the enemy takes more damage. But I could also trade that in for 15% non-fizz resistance and trade for them. Additionally, on that same button, you also get the mages. Now, the mages, you can choose Shadow, Cold, or Bone. Bone is new. They literally fire their own body parts as weapons, so they chunk their own health as they shoot and then kill themselves. Like their last shot kill themselves, but the bone ones do tons more damage. Cold, you can chill and freeze things solid. Shadow just does moderately good damage. And again, there's like option A, option B, or sacrifice them for a buff. Now the golem, D2 added the golems to the franchise, so with the clay golem, the blood, the fire, and the iron golems. In this one, within the confines of the beta, you can get to a bone golem. Now, bone golem is a separate button, so all your skeletons are on one button, bone golem's on another one. Now, outside, the beta ends at 25. We can see that there is a blood and iron golem later on. The bone golem, again, you choose one of two perks, or you could choose sacrifice it for more attack speed. And they've all got activatable skills as well. For example, the Bone Golem, if you hit it, he'll charge to your mouse cursor, and then he'll scream, and he taunts everything around him to hit him. The skeletons, anytime you do raise dead on a corpse, if you've got the max number of skeletons, instead of raising another one, it will just kind of bloodlust them all. They will all get supercharged and get a small heal. That brings me to my next point. The skeletons all fully heal when you're out of combat. So you may have already seen that. Like, I ran over here, during this conversation, and I killed a few things. And after the fight, they instantly, like topped off. So right there, you can see there's some that are not full health, and they're gonna finish killing this ghost thing. And we're just gonna chill for a minute, watch their health bars. Boom, they're full again. In Path of Exile, there's no passive health regen on your minions. You can get traits that do that. I think the earliest you could possibly get is around level 15 if you're going straight for that on the giant skill tree. But the fact that from level 1, they have very smart AI. They don't get stuck on corners like a D2. They fan out to attack all enemies. They're really strong with no skill points invested, and they full heal the moment you leave combat. Wow. This is probably the strongest starting set of skeletons I've ever seen in Necromancer gameplay. And again, this is the warrior boys are available from level 1. You get the mages and the golem later on. So, and here's a quick example of if you do raise undead and they're already, you have the max amount. You see a skeletal priest briefly appear and heal them all and buff them. So, that's what I have to say about the skeletons, and I'll be comparing that to the Druid summons here in just a little bit. Another cool thing is, let's say you're near... Necromancer is very common during this beta. Let's say I'm near another Necromancer. He's got an army out. It's very low opacity. Opacity? I'm sorry, I'm trying. Transparency. His skellies are 90% transparent. You can barely see them, and I think that's nice. Because if you're near a bunch of other Skelly players and stuff, yeah, you're aware that they're there, but it's not covering the whole screen. With D2, it would, in fact, cover the entire screen. The whole map in some cases, if you had the 99 skeletons. So, that's the thing. If you run with a friend and they use summoning and you hate it because they, block the whole screen, it's not that bad. And I think that was a nice touch. Skill tree. Okay. So, D2 and D3 Necros are different. If you're comparing this to D2, the poison skills are gone. D2 had the summoning tree, the curses tree, and poison and bone. Poison is gone. There's no poison nova or anything like that. Stuff that did make the cut, there are darkness spells, which are completely new. For example, I can summon a clone of myself that then reaps in a line, which is pretty cool. I've been using that one. There's also Decompose, which fires like a Slurpee straw beam, and it tears things apart, and it spawns corpses. It's piles of flesh on the ground, but you can use those for sacrificing and doing stuff like this. There's blood spells, there's bone spells, similar to Bone Splinters is very clearly it's teeth from D2. Bone Spear is Bone Spear from D2. And then there's a handful of other new things like Blood Surge, Blood Lance, Blight. Those are all new. Darkness and Blood spells. Corpse Explosion, a classic from D2 and onward. Blood Mist is basically Vlad from League of Legends. Bone Prison. This was in D2, but it looks very different now. I used that on the Butcher a few times, trying to stay alive and keep him away from me. And then we get to Curses. Now, the entire Curses skill tree from D2 got confined to this in D4. So a lot was lost there. However, they kept the main ones. Iron Maiden is still here. Decrepify is still here. Amplified damage got baked into a passive on the others. So for example, by the way, this is what the curses look like. Absolutely gorgeous. So when you curse something, with anything, like if I use Iron Maiden on them, they will also get amplified damage, but it's not as strong as it was in D2 because you're getting a 2-for-1. And it's not bad. It's not bad. It's beautiful. It's very responsive, and it does what it needs to do. Like my build right now that I was running with is I was throwing this on them. There's a trait that makes the curse free if it hits someone who was not already cursed. So I could spam this and hit them with Iron Maiden and amplify damage. And then when they would hit the shield bros, they were taking my thorns and also the Iron Maiden damage. So they would hit themselves twice when they would hit any of my people. And it's worked out really good for me, and it did not even take the main resource. So I could then use that main resource when I needed to burst with Sever. So that worked out pretty good. So the curses, we lost a lot there, but the important ones are still there. After that, we've got corpse skills. There's corpse tendrils, which was an interesting thing. So corpse tendrils, can I show that really quickly? So corpse tendrils is like this. A corpse bursts out, and then it goes out, grabs all the mobs, and pulls them in. It's basically Pyranado. It's basically Pyranado from D3. If you were a fan of that, it operates in the same way as or Gravity Well from the Wizard. It's a move to pull a bunch of enemies to one central location. It's just a very gross version of it. There's also Bone Spirit, which hails all the way back from D1. In this case, it just takes however much essence you've got. It's your mana bar. However much energy you've got here, and it dumps all of it at once and fires a massive homing missile. And it just does a ton of damage to, one target and anything around that target. Ultimate abilities, there's a Tidal Wave of Blood, there's Bone Storm, which is like a tornado of bone around you and your golem, and there's Army of the Dead, which instantly spawns all your skeletons if you did not already have them out, and also summons a bunch of kamikaze ones that run at enemies and explode. I'm going to be honest, on none of the classes I've tried so far have I enjoyed the ultimate moves because their cooldowns are 90-second cooldown. Now, there are some legendaries and stuff that's like every time you get a crit, reduce the cooldown of your ultimates by 1 second. If you had some of those, maybe, but just in general, I really don't like the ultimates just because their cooldowns are so freaking long. And then there's a few other things later on. Now, all of that said, you've got the skeletons, the mages, the golems. Like I have only good things to say about their AI. I'm getting attacked right now. I'm just going to throw the curse and then they can clean it up. Their AI stuff like that is really good. The poison stuff's gone. If you liked playing a dot class, you'd probably like the Druid more, and I'll be talking about Druid in momentarily. The darkness spells are new, and they're pretty cool. Blood magic, it's had a bit of blood magic in previous games, but there's a lot more. Like, you can have an entire build focused on just blood spells, just ripping the blood out of your enemy. There is, and you may see this in other videos, there's a move called Blood Mist, and when you use Blood Mist, it effectively makes you, let me unspin a point down here and we'll show it. When you use Blood Mist, you are invulnerable for the course of it. And you are hitting everything around you and doing some other stuff. So this is Blood Mist. You're slower, but invulnerable. Now, it's very similar to Vlad's move from League of Legends. Now, the thing is you're invulnerable and doing some damage, and your minions are fine. There is a legendary where, while blood misting, you are generating and exploding corpses around you. And there's another one that's like every time you get a kill or explode a corpse, you reduce the cooldown of Blood Mist to the point where you can have it permanently active. And then you are invulnerable. You are an invulnerable Necromancer. I don't expect that to make it into the final version of the game. I don't think they would like to have a character that's just got 100% uptime on invulnerability. But yeah, I think that's how it is. Talk about how strong the Necro is. Insanely strong. You don't have a movement skill other than the dodge, which hurts sometimes. But like, I ran into the Butcher on this character, and I was not ready, and I kited it a lot, and I threw a lot of skeletons at it, and I killed it. I have run into the Butcher on other characters when I wasn't ready, and I died. I did not survive on those. Also, on this character, most of the area outside will scale to your level. There is an exception. There's a place up here. I forget the name of it. There's like a town here, and it's always level 30. And I went there at 22 and cleared it. I was 8 levels under leveled. It's supposed to be tough because max level's 25 in the beta, but I went there 22 and cleared it on Necro. I tried to do a similar thing on my Druid where I went to one of those, they're called Strongholds, underleveled, and I died like 3 times. I had my first, second, and third death of all the betas on the Druid trying to do a Stronghold, and I got wrecked. I could not do it. I could not do it. So the army of undead is very, very strong. Like, it is not like, even the D2 Necromancer was strong, but if an AoE, like when you were fighting Diablo, for example, and he would do his Fire Wave, it would kill all the skeletons. These are pretty sturdy, and maybe too much so, considering you don't have to spend points on them. Now, there are some passives, like I spent right here, Skeletal Warrior Mastery, increase the life and damage of the warriors by 45%. There's a couple of small passives, but overall, all this is free, and it's available at level 1. All the other characters, when you make them at level 1, they don't have anything on their bar, but the Necromancer already knows Necromancy at level 1. So, alright. That's what I have to say about the Necromancer. If you missed the poison stuff, sorry, it's gone. Most of the other stuff is still there. It's been changed, like, curses got condensed, summons are smarter and they got condensed. And then there's blood and darkness stuff is pretty new. But overall, it was very fun gameplay. It did feel OP after playing the Rogue. That was the last one I played, and seeing Barbarians struggle. But that's what I have to say about the Necro. All right, next up is the Druid. Now, the Druid hails from Diablo 2. The Druid and the Necro of Diablo 2 were my favorites in the entire franchise. So, again, I have a lot to say about this one as well. Now, the Druid in D2 had 3 skill trees. There was Shapeshifting, Summoning, and Elemental. Elemental was like cold and fire magic. It's a bit different in this one. So shapeshifting in the old days, you would either turn into a werewolf or a werebear. A werewolf specialized in speed, and a werebear was like toughness and strong attacks that were slower. Now, with this, it's more that when you use a skill that is like a shapeshifting skill, you shapeshift and do the skill, and then as soon as you go back to something else, you drop out of the shapeshift. It's kind of cool. Some people might love it, some people might hate it. You basically will, shift into a certain move, do that move, and then shift out. So it's like you're very fluid. You're going in and out of these forms constantly. You can have werewolf and werebear stuff on your bar constantly. And you could be going in between forms all the time, and it looks pretty sweet. That said, if you want to be a werebear like 100% of the time, there are a few traits on the tree that are like, while you are a werewolf, you are 9% faster. While you are a werebear, you are 9%, have a higher 9% more damage reduction, and things like that. So you can just put all werewolf skills on your bar or all bear skills on your bar and stay in that form as long as you're attacking and actively pressing buttons almost the whole time if you prefer to. Or you can do a mix. Like right now I've got 2 werewolf skills, a couple summoning skills, and a couple elemental skills on my bar, and it's pretty good. Touching on elemental, in the past, there was like wind spells and fire spells and cold spells. In this one, there's also storm spells. So you can shoot like blades of wind, you can fire lightning bolts. Cyclone armor has returned from D2, and it's actually better now. It has a passive effect and an active effect, and those are pretty good. However, Volcano is gone. Molten Boulder was downgraded into just Boulder. And Boulder is fine. I mean, it's you throw a boulder, it's pretty cool. I feel like Molten Boulder would have been nice if it had been one of the like little side specializations afterward that you could have gone into. Because it was just such a classic move. It basically just left a trail of fire behind it and exploded at the end of its path. Armageddon is gone. Hurricane is still here. You can still do a full Hurricane build if you were a fan of that. That was one of the top LE builds in the past. There's also an ultimate skill I didn't quite reach called Cataclysm, but again, 80-second cooldown, so it's hard to look forward to something like that. There's an elite skill or ultimate skill for werebear, werewolf, elemental, and also nature magic earth. Now earth, you can see like one of the basic attacks that I like the most is actually earthbending, essentially, from Avatar. And it's just like an uppercut of earth, and when it hits someone, there's a 10% chance to stun them, and if they're stunned and it hits them again, it does 2 hits instead of 1. So it gives you a ranged attack option. Now, the Druid uses a energy resource called Spirit in this beta. I really don't like it. I wish it just had a mana bar. Because, for example, when the Necro or the Wizard, Necro or Sorcerer hits something, and then when they're in between fights, that bar fills back up. The Barbarian, it drains. This one, it just sits there. Like, I could go AFK for a very long time, and it will not come back. So now it only comes back when you're using basic attacks. Like for me, this is one of my basic attacks against certain enemies. And there's basic attacks of different types. Like that was a earth basic attack. There's also a werebear one, a werewolf one, a lightning one, and a wind one. And you can choose which type of basic attack you want to use, whatever works for your build. Companions. Let's talk about companions. So the summoning, I gotta say, in my opinion, this was the most lackluster part. This made me really sad because I loved the Druid of D2 so much. Summoning in D2, you had a few things. One, there was a line of spirits. A spirit was like a ball of light that followed you, and it gave an aura to you and your teammates. It helped in a supportive role. Heart of the Wolverine was a very popular one. It increased the attack speed of you and all your teammates. Spirits are completely gone. Then there was the creepers, which you can actually see right there, that thing like swimming through the ground. It's a vine. That is the creeper. So one of the creepers is back, and it's a pretty good one. So in D2, there was the poison creeper, which poisoned everything it went through, and it was considered a disease, and it would spread. However, it didn't scale well, so it was only useful during the leveling and not the end game, but it was a fun skill. Then there was the life and mana creepers. They would consume corpses of enemies to refill your life and mana. Those are gone. The only one that made it in was effectively the poison creeper, but it has two features to it. One old, one new. One is it will attack sometimes, passively hitting a mob. That's actually broken during the beta. I could not get it to ever work. I literally turned every other skill off and only had the Vine Creeper and Raven on my bar. Neither of those would attack during the beta, which made some fights very difficult. They just would not attack at all. But their active skill did work. This is their active skill. It basically immobilizes and does its poison attack on everything within a large radius at once. And it was quite strong. It was quite strong. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I'm pretty sure I just saw it passively attacking. I'm recording this on day 2 of the beta. Day 1, the Vine Creeper and the Raven auto attack were not functioning at all. If they fixed it, that's awesome. On day 1, it was not working, period. So that's good. That is good. So the second thing was the Ravens. The Ravens in D2, you can have 5 of them out, and they would follow you along and do some attacks, and after they did some enough attacks, they would disappear. In this one, you have one Raven that's doing the guaranteed hits, and then it had an activatable skill, which is, you know what, hold on, let me move a skill point here over to Raven, and put this on the bar. The activate would do a swarm of ravens that would come down and do a lot of damage in an area. And then the passive effect was periodically you would see a raven just swoop and dive bomb an enemy. It was pretty good in theory. Again, I just could not get it to work during the beta. The passive effect was not functioning at all. If it's working now, then great. It was a bug that needs to be fixed. So it was kind of sad times last night. The ravens weren't working. The Vine Creeper wasn't working except for their activateds. The Vine Creeper's activatable was way stronger than the Raven's activatable, so I wasn't using this one. And that leaves the wolves. Now, previously in D2, you could have 5 spirit wolves, which were weak, or 3 dire wolves, which were pretty strong and had life stealing, or 1 grizzly bear, which was insanely strong, but it was only 1 unit. Very sad to see the grizzly bear is gone. It's gone. You can have 2 wolves, and the wolves really kind of bum me out. So you have 2 of them. I think it is safe to say that these wolves, let me just, I one-shot those. I'm trying to get the wolves to attack right now. I think I might have to hit something first. These wolves are, like, the 2 of them combined are weaker than 1 Necromancer skeleton. So I'm just going to do 1 attack there. Now, they have the same AI. They will split up, and they will try to get the enemy's attention. I actually see the Vine Creeper attacking. That is freaking wonderful. I played this for 5 hours last night. It was not working. So basically, it's just like 6 seconds of poison every 6 seconds to something on the screen is how its passive is supposed to function. And I do see it functioning, and I am so happy about that. But the wolves themselves, like, you see how long it's taken them to hit something. Like, they are just so much weaker. They're so much weaker. There's the active of the Vine Creeper. So it was... I don't know. There is a legendary you can get that increases the damage of companions by like 300%, but I feel like you need that to be for the wolves to be on an even playing field with the skeletons, which is very odd. But yeah, so the summons, I would say the Raven and the Vine Creeper were a disappointment only because they were broken, and it seems like the Vine Creeper is fixed. The Wolves were just a pure disappointment. The only good thing they had going for them is if they die, they automatically respawn a few seconds later for free. Instead of you having to hit the button to respawn them, what it does when you hit the button is it sends them... I need to have an enemy for this. There, it does a pounce. They leap in and do a hit on an enemy and do like a larger amount of damage if it connects. It actually missed that time. It did not connect. So we're just going to kill this stuff with lightning really quickly here. So that was pretty neat. But that was the summoning, and I was kind of sad about how the summoning turned out. I may have to try it again now that Ravens and Vine Creeper has been fixed. But if you fancy doing a Summoner Druid, you are going to need certain legendaries to make it work. Whereas the Necromancer, it kind of feels like it just works from level 1. So, kind of sad noises there. Pretty sure I've touched on all my main bullet points here. Oh, Spirit Boons. There is one final thing. So, the Necromancer had Book of the Dead. The Druid had Spirit Boons. This is Spirit Boons. To unlock this, you have to talk to a guy that is outside of the realm of the beta. You cannot get to him. He's in a zone that the beta does not reach, which means no one knows for sure how good these are. So it is possible that these things will make the whole thing much better. But right now, there's like deer, bird, wolf, and snake. I did read from some data miner folks that there was stuff like you can, each one will have a row of perks and you can pick one thing from each row, but then whichever row that you are specialized in, you can have 2 things from that row. I don't know how good they are or if they're, really worth looking into. But overall, the Druid, there were some things I loved. For example, rabies is back. Here's rabies. You turn into a werewolf for a second and bite, and a poison spreads through all the enemies. That's awesome. Very fun. Look, new enemies showed up. It spread to them too. And then I could do this, and then do the big immobilize with the Vine Creeper. Like, those moves are fun. They are fun. However, outside of those moves, I don't know. Just like the weak wolves that don't do anything. Just got really long cooldowns here. Not that my build was like the best build, but it felt very lackluster. And I'm using the term lightly right now. I know there's a lot of people that said much harsher things than that on YouTube already. Just trying to kill Balaam here. The Necromancer and the Sorcerer, like this group that I just killed, could just absolutely delete it. The Sorcerer just by summoning Hydra. But this guy, I don't know, he just feels so much weaker than the others right now and clunkier. But, yeah. At this point, I think I'm talking in circles. Yeah, the Necromancer, very, very powerful. Again, they removed a lot of the customization, but they added the whole Book of the Dead system, which is pretty interesting. Maybe it's a bit too strong that you just get that for free. The Druid, you have to do a quest to get Spirit Boons. For Necro, you had to do a quest to unlock Golem, but that was at 25. For Druid, you get a quest to do Spirit Boons at 15, but you can't get it right now, so we don't know how strong that is. If you were a big fan of Summoner, or Volcano, or was it Armageddon, where you would bring down the raining meteors? All that's gone. You can still do Hurricane builds, or new like Earthbending builds, or Werewolf and Werebear builds, and it's more of a fluid system where you go in and out of the forms constantly now. So it is very different. So I guess the TLDR is if you are going into, trying to play certain classes from D2 in D4, it's not the same. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something you should know. Your Poison Necro is gone. Your Volcano Druid, your Molten Bolt Druid, those are gone. There are different things in their place. Maybe you'll like them as well, but it's very different. These are very clearly inspired by their predecessors, but they are not copies of them. Yeah. All right. So that's it. That's all my thoughts on trying the second of the 2 Diablo 4 betas. And, if you want to hear me blabber more about games, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.